This is George Dionne from Metal Express Radio, and I'm here with guitar legend Joe Satriani.
Joe, if I knew absolutely nothing about your music, how would you describe it to me?
Well, you can start generally by saying instrumental electric guitar rock, just so you know that it's not blues, reggae, hip hop, pop, whatever. Um, I think if I had to look back, I hate analyzing myself. I think it's the worst thing you can do as an artist of any kind. You just leave that to the professionals, But when pressed to do so, I would say I definitely lean really heavy on strong melodies, unique harmonies, fat, comfortable grooves, interesting recording textures. I mean, that's although I can't help but be a product of my generation. Those are the things that I've really worked on the most. And I know this. I have these insights mainly because my very good friend Steve Vai has been so good at being an honest springboard. Every time I make a record, I'll send it to him, a month or so before it comes out, and he'll write a critique, and he kind of explains to me what I've done. And I've often said to him, I have no idea what kind of a record I've made until I get a report back from him, but that kind of echoes it because, he'll point those elements out quite often. And I don't notice them because everything's difficult for me when I'm playing guitar. You know what I mean? Everything seems equally difficult. If I'm just trying to figure out what kind of vibrato to use on one note, to me, it's everything. It's the world. It's the entire universe. It's like a weight on my shoulders, how I'm going to play that one note. Or it's equally the same if I've got something that is the fastest thing I've ever played or has the longest solo I've ever done. It seems equally monumental as a task, even though I've invented it and I love it. It's still it's right. They're on par as far as how seriously I take them.
Your latest album is The Elephants of Mars. It comes out on April 8th on Ear Music. I felt it was sort of a cinematic type album. Like every track I was listening to wasn't a continuation of a soundtrack, but more of its own sort of. One was sci-fi, one was action, one was drama, one was thriller. I thought Night Scene was sort of like a nighttime scene in Miami Vice. So was that something? Was the cinematic thing something you went for?
I did. I think one of the overriding themes of the album was the fact that I was doing it in private, and it had such a liberating effect on the kinds of things that I felt free to write about. Because at no point when I said to somebody, I've got this idea about the future and scientists terraform Mars, and somehow they don't realize that they've created a race of sentient gigantic elephants, and they align with the rock and roll guitar playing colonists to liberate the newly terraform Mars from the evil corporations of Earth. To me, that's like a normal thing. I get all excited and I turn the amps on and I start writing. But if I said that to a group of people, most people would really laugh, and you'd never get to the next step of actually, turning that into a piece of music. And every step of the way, whether it's a deep science fiction story like that, or it's something really simple like Bluefoot Groovy, like I just feel great, like want to show this person that I'm all that. It's just a totally feel good kind of a more of a visceral song than an intellectual song. I'm not embarrassed to do that, of course, when I'm by myself. You know what I mean? So I think that created this sort of artistic license, for me to just say, yeah, go ahead. Night Scene. Yeah. Really retro synthy, pump and bass and synth tones that are, you've never used before, that kind of stuff. It really opened the door to more expressive guitar playing, which is was one of the things that was on my list of things to get to for this album. Write better, arrange better, play better, get more interesting guitar sounds, just basically raise the level of quality, the standard of the instrumental guitar album. So it's not just a demonstration of chops saying, hey, look how fast I can play. Come see me on tour. I don't need to do that. It's album number 19. I think people figured out that I can play,
You touched on it briefly with the song The Elephant of Mars, and I've watched your YouTube videos breaking down Sahara and Faceless. Do you always have a story in mind when you're writing these instrumental compositions?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, sometimes the story really does precede the writing of the music. And other times the story is something that comes as I gain perspective on what the song means to me. So I could give you like an example, like Faceless was something that I felt all at once. And I wrote the song as I was immersed in that feeling. Someone feeling so isolated because they can't be recognized for their true self. And but a song like Desolation was so difficult to get to because it started in a completely different musical tangent. I'd written this small piece of music that had this beautiful theme, and my producer got a hold of it, and he thought, let me see if I could turn this into something really long. And after a few months, he sent it back, and it was 20 minutes long. And he had written this long orchestral crescendo leading up to my part, and he put it in the middle, and he expanded and repeated the motifs and melodies and harmonies that were part of my original song. And then he added this orchestral improvisation at the end. And when I listened to this whole thing, the first thing I thought was, well, you can't release that on an album. It's way too long. It's not 1971 anymore, And then I thought, well, the middle part, I don't really like this song that I've written that much. Like, it was a nice little musical cue for, let's say, a TV show, but I don't think it's the quality of it is not high enough to be on one of my albums. But that third part, I thought, wow, every time I get to that third part, I kind of get super emotional. So I thought I have to figure out what is this triggering in me. So I called Eric and I said, look, you're not going to believe this, but let's get rid of part 1 and let's get rid of part 2. I apologize for all the work you did, but even my part, I don't like anymore. But what I love is your thing at the end. And so I just have to figure out what to play on it. And in the end, what happened was I started to realize that what it triggered in me was this idea that at a deathbed scene, there's two things happening. There's the person dying, and there's the person who's going to be left behind. And both of them are engaging in all kinds of memories and feelings of fear, regret, happiness, fulfillment, and it goes back and forth between these two people. Perhaps they're in love, and I thought it needs to be somehow represented musically. So how do you do that? And so I come into the studio and I try day after day to get into that zone and to truthfully record myself feeling that and exploring that dialogue that might be going on between these two people. And then one day it happened, and that was it. And I sent it to Eric and I said, this is it. It's just a live performance, but this tells the story. And of course we realized it was very powerful, but the only place we could put it would be at the end, because it would be kind of a bummer to put it anywhere else, on the album. So it's, you never know when you're writing if, how it's going to play out. Like I said, it could be a story you start with or a story you discover that's deep inside.
Even though the album bears your name, this album was kind of a group effort between Brian, Kenny, Rye, and your producer, Eric.
Yes, yeah. Well, Eric and I, we met in '96. He was brought in as a digital editor for the G3 Live DVD and CD package. So, because we had 3 bands, 3 nights recorded, all these songs, and he had to somehow, once he got information from the 3 different bands, from Eric and Steve, had to somehow prepare it and get it all together for Mike Fraser, who was mixing the project. And then right after that, we decided to work together on the next record, which was Crystal Planet. And he wound up since I made no demos for that album. It was really weird, that record, because all I did was write everything down on some paper, and I rehearsed with the band. So we never heard any demos to alter our perception of where the songs could go. And then I asked Eric to work up techno versions of every song that Stu and Jeff and I would hear in our headphones while we were tracking as a power trio. And it really changed the way that we played, because we heard all this, chicka, chicka, chicka sequence stuff going on, and we would react to it. And then when Mike went to mix it, I said, just bring all that stuff out. Just, maybe a couple of songs have some of those techno elements, but actually I just wanted the energy there to affect the band. So anyway, that's another interview. So we did the Engines of Creations record in his living room, no speakers. It was totally trance techno record. Then he joined the band for maybe a tour or 2. And then he's worked on and off as an editor, mixer, co-writer. So on this album, he definitely was the producer, and he co-wrote 3 of the songs with me. So yeah, lots of great input from everybody.
Excellent. Is there a significance behind the address on the track East 104th Street, New York City?
Yes, that address between 1st and 2nd Avenue is where my father was born and raised. And as a kid, I was there every weekend visiting my grandparents and my cousins and the uncles. And it was a great time in the 60s. We lived just about 30 minutes outside the city. So it was a change of venue for sure for a kid growing up in the suburbs to go to the city and have fun. In the 70s, of course, I was coming of age. I was a new young musician. I was hanging out, watching concerts at Central Park and Fillmore East, and getting my guitars worked on 48th Street. And it's just a great scene, all the music. But it was a scary city in going through a really rough economic decline, oil embargo, inflation, just everything that was, the 60s were burning hard. they just kind of delivered the 70s like a pre-charred decade. And there was just all this stuff between jazz and fusion and rock and the beginning of disco and punk. And anyway, so there I was, sort of coming of age during that period. And I wanted to write about that, some sort of overall vibe for that moment. And I had to pick a date that somehow summed it up. So I kind of zoned in on 73 because it seemed like that was the sum total of a lot of that, So I was just thinking, yeah, it's, 4 a.m, you're at some studio or some club and you got your guitar and wah-wah and you're just doing a really cool jam. And it's sort of between rock and jazz and it's freeform. And I love that period as I was learning to be an intermediate, hoping to be an advanced player, that was the kind of stuff that we would play or we would see at the Blue Note or something like that, when you went to see, I don't know. I remember seeing Mahavishnu Orchestra at Central Park. And it just blew my mind. I mean, just how great John McLaughlin and that whole band was. But that was the vibe, at the time.
After 19 studio albums of mostly instrumental work, have you ever duplicated yourself?
I don't ask myself those kinds of questions. That's the kind of thing like your friend taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, by the way, you did that on the last record." You know? But I don't know. I suppose it would be good to, to be the ultimate arbiter, to go back and say, to check yourself on all your records. But there's something about going backwards that's really counterproductive for any artistic, pursuit. You should just keep moving forward. And, if something sounds a little bit like something before, I mean, I think perhaps you say sorry, and then you say, yeah, but who else should be able to do that? Probably me. I'm the only one who's allowed to, cover the same ground. But that's okay. I mean, I think the most important part is what new have you put into it? You know what I mean? I mean, if 120 beats per minute, how many songs in a musician's career have they played that have the same tempo? So that would be a very high number, right? So that's not a bad thing. How about how many songs has a musician played in their, 40, 50 years that are in the key of C? Well, that would be thousands probably. That shouldn't deter you from doing another song in the key of C. So at some point you arrive at this really finite argument like, well, you played that phrase kind of like that, 7 albums ago. And you're like, give me a break, I'm allowed to do that.
There's some musicians out there that say rock and roll is dead. So I would pose the question to you, is the guitar dying? Because there's not a lot of guitar in today's mainstream rock, and there's not a lot of guitar-centric artists out there anymore.
Yeah, well, that won't change what I do. And I would say if you spend any time on social media, you will find a young generation of guitar players who are playing better and more intricate, more complicated music than has ever been played in the history of civilization. I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, what the young guitar players can do today is absolutely mind-blowing. It's fascinating. It is proof that the human potential keeps growing. And they're doing it on 6, 7, 8, and 10 string guitars. They are playing faster, more complicated. It's really remarkable what they're doing. They are, you're right. They're not being rewarded in the pop world. BTS is the biggest band in the world. Of course, they're not going to have a 3-minute solo by a guitar player playing an 8-string guitar. It's just not going to happen. So they're, that's tough for them. They're not getting any support. There are fewer live places that will hire them to play. It's not, when I was young, there were so many bars and so many places to play that within months of me learning how to play guitar, I was performing live and making 10, 15, 20 bucks, enough to buy strings. And, it was interesting that it helped me grow as a musician. And then when I was a professional, the craziest thing happened. People started playing my instrumentals on the radio. Again, that's because I got support. So I was extremely lucky that I was getting support from the outside world. But it doesn't change the fact that if you took a bunch of us old guitar players and you put us in a room with these young players, they would shred us to death. It's so I think a lot about this because every day, I kid you not, I check them out, and it's what makes me feel excited about practicing, because on the one hand, it kind of puts me in my place, but it's like, okay, I know I've been around the block, so I deserve it. But on the other hand, I go, but look what they come up with. That's the human potential right there. So maybe I can get a little better if I just watch them a little longer. It'll rub off. So that part of it's really tough. You can't look at I don't know. Before Hendrix broke, the Billboard charts look pretty scary. It's like every time you try to generalize about where things are going, you're making a big mistake. That's look what happened to the president of the Ukraine. I mean, he made a big mistake, right? In underestimating Putin. And that's a really severe way of looking at it. But music is the same. When somebody says, oh, I've looked at the charts today and this is what's happening, so tomorrow you can't be happening. That to me is, that's just crap. We
Absolutely.
don't know who's going to be popular tomorrow. It might be a 19-year-old guitar player who plays faster than we can hear, and he just happens to wrap it up in something that the world wants to hear over and over again. So don't count them out now.
Let's hope so. Are you going to be able to tour on the new album? You weren't able to tour on Shapeshifting.
I know. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, that's what led to the creation of this album. But we will get on stage, I believe, by the last quarter of this year or the last third of this year. And we'll celebrate both albums, finally. There'll be a lot of new material to play in front of people. So I know we're talking every day, my crew, my management, agent, getting it all together. Everyone's a little gun shy about it, but, every time we hear somebody goes out on tour and then all of a sudden we hear they get canceled again because they get sick, it's a real bummer. But I really appreciate those bands going out and trying to push the envelope, because they're kind of they're testing the protocol for all of us, whether it's Dream Theater or Justin Bieber, they're trying to figure out a way to keep their audiences safe and their crew safe and themselves safe. But I think that's coming. I think I have this feeling like in 6 months, everything's going to be way better than it is now.
In addition to creating music, you've done some artwork lately on canvas, on guitars. I noticed that white guitar behind you. Is that one of the ones that you painted?
Yes.
So how'd you get into painting stuff?
These guys are always looking at the strings like, he played what? So, I remember taking that one out on the 2018 G3 tour, and it was a good way that I keep myself in check, laugh at myself for trying all the crazy things I try on stage. But I through my association with the Scene 4 Art Collective, doing all the time-lapse photography canvases with them, and then some mixed media stuff with them, they introduced me to Christian O'Mahony, who owns the Wentworth Gallery chain on the East Coast of the U.S. And he commissioned me to do several hundred paintings, some on guitars and mostly on canvas. And so I've been super busy the last, 14 months doing that. And I really love it. I just yesterday I sent 10 more out, and the week before that, 10 more out. So I've been learning to be a better artist every day, and I'm so grateful that they've given me this opportunity, to put my crazy ideas on these big canvases. It's really exciting, I tell you, when you walk into a gallery and you see some weird face or circle or whatever that you created, and it's hanging up in a gallery wall and people are looking at it and buying it. And it's really like when you hear one of your songs on the radio for the first time. It's totally surreal. And you go, how did that get from in here to out there? It's remarkable.
What do you think of Steve Vai's Hydra creation guitar?
Insane. It's funny you should say that, because I'm looking at my laptop and I just got a text that's like this long from Steve. So he must have something to tell me. But before then, about a week and a half ago, he sent me a bunch of video clips of him actually playing it. Because I already told him, he's got this problem with his shoulder. And I said, Steve, why did you create a triple heavy guitar if, you're going in for shoulder surgery? But there's nobody like Steve. I mean, it's just his creativity and his power of concentration is unparalleled. I've never known anybody who, once they get an idea about something, they pursue it like nothing else, and they achieve it, you know. So not only did he build this beautiful thing, or, you know, ordered it built, designed it, but he can actually play it. And that's when he sent me those video clips, I thought, oh, he is really insane. I mean, I knew he was insane before, but now it's like, now I've got video clips to prove it.
You hinted on your website that you might have had a rough album that's vocal centric versus guitar centric. Is there any movement on that?
No. You know, what happened was at the beginning, the first lockdown that we had, I started to think that it would make sense to record 2 albums to showcase the new band. So I had Ray Thistlethwaite on keyboards and guitar, and he's also an amazing lead vocalist for the band Thirsty Merc. So I thought it might be cool to show the audience that he's also this guy, because, you know, they're a platinum act in Australia, but I don't think many people know who they are out here in the US. And so I wanted to showcase him so people could hear all of his talents. Then I thought, well, I've got Brian Beller and Kenny Aronoff for the first time being a live rhythm section, and I wanted to create an album where they could stretch out. And I thought, well, we'll do these 2 albums, and we give the tracks away as like freebies when we finally do, you know, hit the stage, as a sort of a supplement to Shapeshifting. But as you know, 3 months turned into 6, 6 turned into 9, 9 turned into a year, and then a year and a half. And that's when I realized, well, no, by the time I put out new music, people are going to expect a brand new album. You know, they will have taken in 2020 Shapeshifting and thought, well, okay, now what's next? It's 2022. It's, maybe 23. I had no idea. So I thought I better, come up with something even bigger and bolder, and put those supplemental albums on the forgotten list or to-do list, in the future.
The new album, The Elephants of Mars, it is bigger and it is bolder, and it comes out April 8th on Ear Music. Fantastic job, Joe. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you so much. Enjoy that whiskey behind you.
I will. I'll have one in your honor.